Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. Today's video we're looking at Steven Slate Drums SSD for short, but seeing there is no downloadable of the full kit, but you have the free version, we will call that the demo version, which of course becomes SSDD. Now, Steven Slate's become a very big name in the industry, and I've several times tried to work out who is this Steven Slate guy. I remember in early 2000s or something or other, 20 years ago, suddenly there was this name that it was like, oh, Steven Slate's the pro drum guy. He gives you the pro drum samples. I hadn't heard of him. I mean, it's not like I knew his name. It's not like I should know every drummer out there, but is he Pace? Is he Palmer? Is he one of the Appice brothers? Is he a Bozio? Who is this guy? And to be honest, to this day, I still don't know. The only real information that's given is that somehow, magically, in this somewhere around 2000, he apparently built himself a little recording studio for drums and suddenly was selling samples. And apparently they became the go-to for certain producers. Good on him! And out of that, he's built this empire, not only of Steven Slate drums, but the whole Slate digital thing. That's along with Fabrice, Gabriel. Good on him. Drums have become another part of this whole kind of door culture, and things have changed. When I was growing up, if you wanted a drummer, you needed a drummer. So you went out and you find the closest you could to an Ian Pace or a Bonham or whoever, which meant that you ended up with a drummer who was probably unique to you. And I remember being in the alt venues back then. This is back in the late 80s, and just about every drummer was. It was just an immense amount of tom work. And it was a bit much. But the way that everyone approached all of that meant that when you got a drummer, yeah, it was a drummer, you ended up with something or someone unique. And then through this whole doorism thing, suddenly nobody wanted a drummer anymore. Even drummers themselves started to abandon their actual craft. And drumming is a craft. There is something about an amazing drummer that you just cannot replicate. I remember going to see a band with friends of friends in it, and doing the right thing, come along, support them, and they were okay. I mean, they were quite good. Technically, they were quite good, but I was arrested by this drummer. This drummer played as though he were a drum machine, and I was kind of like, that's interesting, but I felt like it actually let down the band and their uniqueness, in the sense that we didn't have a drummer who was flowing with the groove of the music. We had a drummer who was so perfectly emulating drum loops and drum samples and the drum machine-ism of the day. And I don't mean super cool CR78s or what have you. He was emulating drum machines that were trying to emulate drummers, which was like several degrees of weirdness. But now it seems to have become the default in so many situations, and I think it's kind of a shame. So that is going to flavour my approach to this and very similar products. I do use them sometimes, but I try to use them with a certain amount of caution and care, because otherwise I will fall straight into the trap that I think these products have led to. So, Steven Slate Drums, one of the big names in the whole VST drumulator type things. And overall, before anyone gets their underpants in a bunch, I do think that his product is very good. There are some things about it that I think that are better than some competing products, and I haven't looked at all competing products, but I'll show you the things that I know passably in a comparison. There are some things that I'm sort of like, oh, a bit surprised you didn't do that. Maybe it's on the list, maybe there's a reason why, I don't know. So, Steven Slate, as we see, you land on the site, and it's very clearly identified who it is. It's very clearly showing to us, ooh, I'll get a drummer of my own when I can control, because you can never control real drummers. They're annoying. They're like Charlie Watts. They might just come punch you in your bed. I had a lot of respect for Charlie. He was an absolutely superb drummer. You know, it's kind of like the complete opposite of all the glam rock drummers. He was like, but such a beautiful drummer. And to be fair, they also show that this is being driven by an on-screen thing, a VST thing. There is a big promise, and this goes across the board with all of them, so it's very hard to compete in this game, and it is a game, if you don't play that game. Each product is trying to one-up the other with degree of proness, and Steven, of course, claims this degree of proness from having provided the first pro drum samples. For all we know, Steven invented the concept of adding the word pro to the front of things. If so, it's kind of a marketing masterstroke. Otherwise, whatever. But it's a game. In terms of cost, it's currently on sale for $99, but its full price varies on how much you want to buy into. I will leave you to research price at the time in which you are in the market for these things. So, looking at the product, it does allow you to embiggen itself, which is nice, especially if you happen to be a reviewer. It's kind of good, kind of cluttered. One of the weird things is that when you load it up first, like when you first start it the first time, you hit play on something and it's silent. For some odd reason, they don't load with a default kit, which you can then turn around and say, no, I don't want that kit, I want a different kit. Now, while I can see that's a good thing in a sense that it causes you to choose a kit, and in this case we only have 3 to choose from, your plugin also starts with nothing happening. So just letting you know that when you load, you might be excited and scoot to grooves and then go, why doesn't anything play? Make sure you choose a kit. Otherwise you will hear nothing. So we have the usual do that for the next half hour. Very regular. Here, look, here's a kit, and you can see it. You can even see that happening. Ooh. Shame you can't see the guy with the hair doing like and then the choke. You've got quite a lot of editing control, and the dynamics and velocity control, I got to say, I did rather like. You can actually skew how our velocity works on particular drums. Now, where were we? I set something off. Oh, maybe I didn't. Maybe it went back. But you can change how velocity works, and it doesn't seem like it does work. So how it scales. So with this curve, it goes straight to I'm a heavy kicker, whereas this way, great for ghosty kind of stuff. If you've got someone who plays a lot of ghosty stuff, or if you're looking for a jazzier sort of a feel, then you can change your velocity curve. That I do really like. Straight up, I think that's great. You can change your overall dynamics, in which case there is none. So you can vary, or say I only want him to be this percentage of a dynamic kicker. And that's across all of the samples. You have the ability for layers, So you can have quite a few layers. Sorry, this is the layers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. And then each head you can choose how you mix. I'm in two minds about these sorts of approaches, but so long as these are unique samples, I don't really mind. If they are an actual reverb unit, I also don't really mind, but I think some care needs to be taken with understanding how this thing works. And that is, before you start meddling with these, have an understanding of how a drum kit gets recorded. So yes, we all kind of know that you jam a microphone into the hole in the back of the kick drum, give or take. And that will be our kick out, but you might also be miking the front of the kick or various other places, which is like your overheads. So above a drum kit, you will commonly see a mic or a pair of mics, which will pick up the higher metal work as well as the overall sound of the kit, and they will tend to get quite a clicky kind of part of the kick drum. Room will be a mic or a pair of mics somewhere else in the room, and room B is commonly a further back in the room. So you have the option to balance up these different things. Now, to be honest, I haven't read what SLR is. We can actually mute and therefore solo different sounds. Apart from being a self-loading rifle, I'm not sure. No doubt it will be in the manual. Don't have a go at me for not reading the manual. As far as I'm concerned, a great modern product should be fairly self-evident. A lot of this is self-evident. Maybe I just don't know enough about the modern parlance to know how self-loading rifles are related to drumming. I know that often you would like a self-loading rifle when dealing with a drummer. So you've got a lot of control on how you balance things up, not only with your levels, but where you wrap things. Just understand this has a big impact on your overall drum sound, as I will show you a little bit later. Then you can control ADSRs and what have you. Again, not going to bog down in any of that. You've got your master volume. You can tune, even though that appears to be labeled phase. They have drawn a little line, but after a little while you work that out. And phase means you can invert the phase of a drum head. The reason this is important is, and we would hope that all Mr. Slate's drums were appropriately in phase, I'm sure they are, but if you bring in a sample from somewhere else, it may be out of phase. So as Mr. Slate's kick drum goes up, your imported sample may go down. It doesn't mean that your imported sample is wrong, just that that's how it's worked out. So you can actually invert them so that they both go up. There are also other reasons why you might want to invert. So if you've got a mix and you sort of feel like, yeah, I'm not quite loving how this snare is sitting in this situation, rather than going, oh, I have to break everything out into 48 tracks across my mixing board, which really is not my approach, sometimes there can be a big win in simply taking that snare and inverting its phase. I know some people might howl at me and go, oh, but that's out of phase. It's like, your girlfriend's probably out of phase as well because you're not sitting the perfect distance from her. Get over it. This is reality. We can actually change how a head sits in the room feel by changing its phase. So don't be afraid to use the funny looking button. We've got access to a lot of the same stuff here. We can choose our instruments, but we can also do a lot of this stuff in the mixing desk panel. So that's a fair bit like having broken out all of these things onto our desk, only they've given us a desk inside here. I'm not sure that I fully love it, but I also don't dislike it. I do have an issue with the panning. As I said before, this one's quite a turn-off for me, to be honest. Other people are going to be like, why is that an issue? And other people are going to be like, but that's the way it should be. There is no should in this issue. There are two ways. When I grew up, there was one way of how we pan out a drum kit. Well, there were two ways. Pan it wherever the hell you want, which is how we saw a lot of very creative drum placement in 80s records, and commonly you had hi-hat first hit here and second hit there. Cool. If the records sound great, like Alison Moyet's Alf sounds great. I want to be the hi-hat player. Nothing wrong with that. That's one approach. The other is to have an audience perspective. So if you're sitting in the audience, you have the opposite view of the drummer. And a lot of things in this system, Slate system, seems to be locked into drummer's perspective, meaning that when I play the hi-hat, it actually sounds, and I'm backwards, it sounds to the listener as though it's on the side where the drummer is, which is wrong, because when you're in the audience looking at those drums on stage, you're actually hearing the hi-hat off on your right-hand side. So recordings coming back on your left-hand side, you can either say, what does anybody care? And maybe hipsters don't care because maybe they never go see real bands anyway. I don't know. It's not like I do anymore anyway either. But I'm very much of the audience perspective approach to mixing. I get that there is an alternate view, and now so many things are mixed from the drummer's perspective, which to me just seems very strange, but whatever. But I cannot find an option to invert any existing panning, and nor is it easy when you find the hi-hat to actually fix their panning. Where is it? It should be it there. If we turn, you might say, oh, but it's all come from there, but it hasn't. If we listen to our overheads and room, you can actually hear it's off on the one side. And if there were a mono button to monoify any particular instrument, and again, I can't see one, then I wouldn't have that much of a beef. It would just be like, okay, hi-hat, hit the mono button, so it turns that sample into mono. Now I pan it where I want it to be. His system, to me, feels like it has imposed a decision on me and not the decision I want. So the only way I could cope with that is either to completely change my way of working, or to be forced to output some or all of these sounds individually, which again forces me to change my way of working. I want to work a drum kit into being one object. I am not looking to, as a general rule, break a drum kit out into 48 different objects so that I can present the listener with 48 different parts of a drum kit. I'm looking to present them with one drum kit. There are times where I'll break out, like I've shown you in the Volcano video where I've broken out the snare so that I can do the explosion thing, which you don't want to do on the whole kit. So I have that beef, and that beef almost feels fatal, despite the fact that there are other things that I rather like about this. You can get into mapping what you want to go where. Woohoo! Great. It's good that it's there. You've also got some patterns. So you can say, okay, I'm feeling jazzy. I will want to hear this. And change your dynamics. Whoops. Too many play buttons at once. I do that every time I play with one of these drum things. MT the whole lot. I start them playing here and then press stop on the sequencer. You can grab these and drag them out into the sequencer. I won't do it at the moment because, for me at least, it creates a little bit of a mess. In that it either goes and loads a different device if I've not dragged it actually to the drum channel, which is fair enough. because Reason's solving that problem for me of like, what on earth are you doing here? Let me give you this. Or when I drag it into Reason's track for the SSDD, it gives me, I think it's 3 MIDI automation things, which it tells me are unassigned. And my opinion on that is that maybe those MIDI things are super useful, but they're super useless when they're unassigned. So I don't know whether that's simply how it interfaces with Reason, because a few months ago, when I did my 10 best free, SSDD missed out because it just plain wouldn't run in Reason. So it may just be a Reason thing, but I don't want to drag MIDI in and then have it create useless things. But once you've got the MIDI in, get rid of the apparently useless things, then you get a performance, and it sounds like this. So I took an intro, a first verse, a second verse, another thing, a break, and then something else. Now, it sounds pretty good. It does sound pretty good. My concern, and I always have this, is that it also sounds rather cliched. It sounds like every band trying to make a one-man prog rock record. And that's not Slate's fault as such, but it is part of the problem that comes with using these kinds of things. Rather than working out how to do their own drum rhythms, their own drum patterns, especially drum patterns based on the material that's already there, you know, it's like my melody has this rhythm, therefore my drums are going to have this rhythm. It's kind of like, we'll just paste these perfect drums on. I know they're perfect because Steven Slate told me they're pro. That's the beef I have. Do the extra work. So that's just Steven Slate. That's out of the box. That's the kind of thing that you're going to get. And to be fair, it's quite good. Let's run through the good and bad, because I've basically covered that already. So you get solid stock sounds. There are, in this case, 3 kits. If you get the full pack, then you get quite a lot more kits, and they are solid. Quite well done overall. The system is quite flexible until it suddenly isn't. There are loads of other sounds and flavors and what have you that you can get, which for many people they're going to be like, oh great, I can buy the Blues Pack 78, whatever. The bad is that, as I've said, we are jammed into we're jammed into drummer perspective. We don't seem to have access to audience perspective without some serious workaround. And that's an issue for me, because with MT and Ugratone, who will quickly scan across a little bit later, they actually have a button that says flip. Whatever panning you've currently got, we will flip it. I like that, because they know that there is a Arthur and Martha approach to how we pan things, and they give me a solution to do that. And Slate, for some reason, has decided that we don't deserve one of those. A problem I have that I've expressed already is that overall I find this and most of these, they're a bit processed and a bit cliche. And as I've said, it's just so easy. You start pressing play on something and you go, oh, here we go. Another drummer program. And I am not anti-drum machine. I am not even particularly anti-drummer program, but I am anti the idea of thoughtlessness, where someone goes, okay, well, I've been told these are perfect. Now, that's not entirely Slate's fault, but it kind of is. Slate, any of these people, Easy Drummer, Superior, whoever, but we're talking Slate today, is that everything has been made so seemingly perfect that there isn't that encouragement to create your own sound, your own version on this. It's not like they're saying you can't do it or you shouldn't do it, but there isn't that kind of encouragement, not only within their site, because to make something different, they say you buy something different. There's a big difference between teaching people how to find their own sound out of their drum kit. Because remember, if you have a drummer, you have one drum kit as a general rule of thumb. Unless he's some kind of Flash Harry Spankmeister, then he probably has one drum kit. And if one of your songs wants to have a punkier edge, you don't rush down and buy yourself another drum kit. You absolutely don't. He just plays it a bit different. He maybe leans on it a bit harder. You might process it a little differently. But the mindset that comes through with Slate and all of these companies, because they are busy trying to market at you, is that they want you on that addiction of the idea that, oh, if you need a slightly different sound or a slightly different result, you better buy another pack. And that I have a major problem with, because it's stopping people from actually developing their craft. And those people are also to blame, because rather than developing their craft, they just get lazy and go, I'll buy the Pro Blues pack because then I will get the Pro Blues sound. Not my idea of how we make interesting music. Just not. Work it out. Build your own thing. Don't spend your time, waste your time going, oh, but I need it to be perfect, because it never, ever, expletive deleted, will be. Work on telling a powerful story, and then it, positively, expletively, will be an interesting piece of work. And if people are not interested to listen, well, wind them a middle finger. All right, moving forward. So we've heard Slate out of the box. Now let's listen to the same thing, only I set it up to do something of my own. My own programming, and I've chosen how I want to balance things up. I actually chose the approach of, let's start from the room end of business and then pull in the individual sounds, like the kick mics, to balance up against what I've got as my overall room. Remember, I'm looking for one drum kit. I'm not looking for 48 random sounds. And then made my own pattern. Now, that pattern's probably not going to sell drum machines with how it is, but it's far more in keeping with what's going to work underneath a piece. I didn't put the time in to write a piece on top of it. I'm sure we don't need it. Notice the more careful use of metalwork to see how that turns out, and that my kick drum player is not working with Thor's leg. But it does have an awful penchant for suddenly becoming a death metal drummer. So part of the flexibility or the versatility of the Slate thing is that we do have the ability to vary the sound a fair bit if we set our dynamic and playing style to suit what we want, rather than it just being on, off, on, off, on, off. That I do like. I did like the sound. I whacked it through my general go-to compressor. I was pretty heavy-handed with that. And then mixed it back in 50-50. Not a thing I commonly do. If it were my mix, I would probably be just a little easier on, but I did quite like the sound I got. And then just gave it level enough to give us a roughly even, well, Steven, between the different things. I then took that MIDI and copied it across to some other things, so we can have a sense of, okay, this is Slate, what are some other options? Now, I don't have any of the big name options, to put it against. So I put it against the other kinds of things that if you're looking at the free version, that you might equally be having floating around. So mine, MT power drum kit. I mean, that's shocking. Look, I mean, the kick pedal doesn't even move. You keep getting black marks on your kit. You can tell there's a difference. The MT doesn't have the depth of dynamic. I quite like the sounds. I've used them a few times, and they are, if you're going to process, they are versatile. I've used them for everything from light country, stupid pop song jokes, through to death metal. And no need to go buying plug-in packs for anything. But it's workable, but you don't have the finesse of the quality of some of the samples. Like the metalwork is far more detailed. That's Slate, and we'll listen again in MT. The level of finesse is not the same. Then, seeing I'd done that, I thought, oh, hang on, I've got these Ugratone things. I bought them when they were dirt cheap, but the reality is they're always dirt cheap. Looks good. So what if I throw the kit pattern at them? To be honest, I don't think I've ever managed to get the cult drums to a finished track. I'd like to, but even where I was working on a song cleverly named Doom Song, I started with the MT. I got the Ugratones because I was like, well, this is going to work. And they didn't make it. They are interesting. And the last one, and this is not really a very fair comparison because the kits up to this point have all had the same, all the same sounds are all in the same keys. So they're interchangeable, general MIDI or whatever the ruling is. The key bindings are the same, whereas this one's not. But I gotta say that for gusto, I rather like this. Thank you. Why do they always go so beep when I'm in the middle of doing work? I know I should turn it off, but then if I turn it off, I won't turn it back on again. The Labs one I rather like. And I've used Labs drums a couple of times and they've made it to mix. You know, start with them, finish with them, scored a very cute little animation with the dancing b-boy on a train, and used these, and they're really nice sort of feel. They're super cool. They've got this really nice, whereas Slate tends to feel, and let's... I know that they're not the same sounds, so it's not entirely fair, and it changes our feeling, but there's a big inside that. Yes, it may need to be managed a little better in the mix, but they're not as processed. They feel more like a little more like we're just in the room with these drums, because real drums, when you're in a real room with them, are raucous, quite unpleasant. But that's part of what we get, whereas there's nothing remotely unpleasant about Slate's drums. And while people will go, but that's excellent, that's the sign of their excellent proness, Benedict. I'm not after excellent proness in music. I'm after excitement, because that, to me, is the proness of music. When you hear Lou Reed singing out of tune about, oh, what a perfect day it is, That's excellent. That is excellence in action. Even though he's out of tune, probably out of time, probably out of his head. We don't need to auto-tune that guy. It will ruin it. We need to follow his story and what he's telling us. And that's where the perfection is, to my mind. And so the perfectionism, technical perfectionism that we get out of all of these styles of things, or most of these styles of things, I find difficult, with the possible exception of the Ugratones, which are, well, unique. But that said, you listen to their productions and they sort of seem to fit, but then again, their productions seem rather fitting a very rigid set of formulas. Maybe one time I will find the right match and I'll be like, $15 well spent. So the slates are a good way of getting into this approach, as is, I still believe, the MT. There are swings and roundabouts, but overall, technically, the SSDD is hands down the winner, with the exception of the very strange lack of an invert pan, which is there and also there in the Ugratone. If there is some kind of hidden invisible setting that allows us to do this, brilliant. All apologies for not having found it. If there isn't, it's one of those things you're going to have to make a decision how important it is to you. For me, despite the fact that the samples really are nice and there's a good amount of versatility, and given time and understanding, one could even get into somewhere. So, samples. Adding your own samples of things. Like I could decide to put my conga here. Yeah, whatever. Let's get rid of it. And I didn't dig into that. That's all great. But it might just be a bit too much of a killer for me that I'm locked into something that I don't want. And nor do I want to be lumbered with the idea of having to load some kind of template if I think, oh, maybe I'll try slate drums rather than building my own analog drums or synth drums in the process. I'm not going to a real drum kit every time. So again, my view may be a little different from the average, but I think we need to be very, very careful that we don't settle ourselves into oh, well, that's just exactly how my drums sound every single time formula, because it's thoughtless and leads to, well, thoughtless music, which leads to thoughtlessness in our audience who just thoughtlessly walk away. So in terms of the free product up against the comparables, which is the MT Power drum kit, technically Steven Slate wins hands down, with the exception of the being stuck in drummer perspective. Up against labs, I think that their labs have a real kind of a to them, which I understand people who are a little less skilled or willing to be skilled in learning how to manage a drum kit in a mix may feel that they are ill-mannered. I like that about them. But it is easier to grab an MT or a slate than it is a labs. Even though technically it's the same, there's just something about that. Here we'll have it all done for you. And of course the laziness of being able to pull in somebody else's pre-made grooves, which both MT and SSDD do. Ugratone is a unique sound, and they do sell that right from the get-go, that they are unique, set up for sort of undergroundy, garagey kind of stuff, and they do have a unique, somewhat toilet sound to them, which could be excellent for what you're looking for. I felt that way when I got in, but then I don't feel like I've ever really recovered that excellence when it's come down to it. But they also have that sort of nice bounce thing, and you come with MIDI packs full of stuff you can drag in. You don't drag them out of the interface, you drag them out of a folder of your MIDI stuff, and so therefore you can pull in somebody else's drum performances as well. That puts them on an equal, and if you're looking for the idea of, oh, well, I would never be playing drums anyway, I'd just go with whatever the drummer gave me. Okay, then they work. Labs doesn't give you any of that. You have to build your own drums from the beginning. But if you're going down this path of wanting to be the one-man band, then learn to be a bit of a drummer as well, because it's going to pay off when you have the ability to control and actually play drums to suit the story that you're telling, rather than just having someone going like a robot, because that's all they are. If you're wanting a bigger package, then that's where you've got to sort of go, okay, well, which way am I going to go? Because there is Slate, and there's a lot of good about what he does in terms of sonically and this, that, and the other. It's all very clean and tidy and generally very well thought through. You just have to try the others. Now, I think I might be trying Easy Drummer next, in which case we'll see how I feel about these against each other. If you have any questions, not technical support for Slate or whatever, but any general questions about material that we've covered, please ask on down below, and as soon as I'm aware of the question, I will get in there with the best sort of answer that I can give you. If you're asking me to solve a problem, I don't 100% mind, but you must show me the actual problem. I had a couple of people ask about something to do with the mix, and I have no idea what the issue is if I can't hear and see it. So these days we have this amazing technology. You're actually watching it in action. You can download OBS, Open Broadcast System, for free and use it to record your screen. It may not be quite as sophisticated as what I've got, because I've got 3 screens and I've been doing this for a while, but I can then literally see what's happening. You know, you can press play on your thing and you can show me the writing and you can show me the thing in action. So not only can I hear it, but I can see it. That way I have a greater chance of being able to say, look, this appears to be what's going on, rather than if you just go, oh, well, I get that. Okay. I feel for you, but it's hard to troubleshoot for you. Not that my job is to troubleshoot for you. My job is as a paid mix engineer. And that's what I'm delighted to be doing. So ask on down below, preferably hit the subscribe button, because this is what we, Mark and I, do, and letting YouTube know that what we're doing is valued helps YouTube to know that it's valued, and therefore to present it to more people to keep the whole boat afloat. Higherhertz.com as well for the other stream of information. You have a great day now.